And we're recording these just to be, we're recording these basically for, in order to better keep track. And, if there's a notes issue, then we're able to know better, what we said and be able to go over things. These aren't technically public meetings because it's not a part of a public body. This is a mayor's advisory group. I kind of went over this last time, but just doing it again. So we have it for the record, because of that, that relaxes the requirement that we're actually in person. This is permissible. Okay. All right, so we brainstormed a bunch of different topics last time. I know that started a little bit of online discussion. And it would seem like a good starting point to maybe talk about what we want to focus on based upon that list or something else. Maybe we can go around and talk about, priorities. Why don't we start with Chris? And Chris, you're muted.
Probably rain barrels and recycling.
Okay.
Would seem to be the easy things to do.
Okay.
If we're looking for a quick win, recycling.
Mm-hmm. Okay. John? And John, you're muted.
I agree with Chris. I think that's a good first step. It's a good short term.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said before, judging from the amount of waste paper you get there at City Hall, people want to do the right thing, and we can make it easier for them to do the right thing. That's good.
Okay. Good. Jeff.
Yes. I had thought that I had talked to Brian, and I spoke to you about this with the Rust Belt Riders.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people got any feel for that or checked into that at all. I have some pictures that I can email out if you're not familiar with it, and a video from them. But I understand in talking to Brian, they're very much interested in participating with University Heights. They have a program for collecting food scrap
Mm-hmm.
and composting. And then for those who are interested, purchasing compost, as I understand it.
Yes. And I know that Brian's going to be joining us after 7:30, but yeah, he did reach out to Rust Belt Riders, and there is some interest there by them. And, we're going to continue to explore that. I think there's something good that we can all do there. Okay. Jackie, thoughts?
I think the reduce, reuse, and recycle is high on the list, a quick win, and I think something that people can get behind and really get involved in. I guess from all the banter after the meeting, I got super confused about what sustainability even was and what exactly are we doing overall.
Mm-hmm.
All of it sounds important, but I think we probably need to focus on what we really mean by sustainability for maybe short-term and long-term, and then, what we can really accomplish in a reasonable amount of time. So that's my thought. But recycling, reduce, reuse, and recycle is a priority for me, and I would like to see our committee do something about that.
Okay. I'm just kind of going around. Joshua?
Yeah, I think what Jackie just brought up was interesting to the idea of just coming up with like an explanation of sort of what we're doing and like, you know, whatever it is, like this is our mission, a mission statement or whatever. And then really, to me, it doesn't matter exactly what we do initially, as long as we just do something that we're all united on. And something perhaps that it does sound like there's some things that are perhaps higher priority and are perhaps easier to accomplish. And so maybe we can come up with a list of a couple of these, like 1, 2, 3 top things that we want to try. We maybe explore what those look like and what those projects might require us to do. And then once we kind of know, you know, okay, well, recycling would take this, rain barrels would take this, rest belt riders would take this. You know, once we understand the scope of those things, then maybe we choose one of them to do that we know that we can complete at a particular time within a deadline. I know that we already have, it sounds like we have finances specifically for like recycling. I think you said that there was like something in the budget for that.
Well, the budget has not yet been passed.
Oh, okay,
So
never mind.
we'll
Forget I
talk
said that.
more about that, but yeah, I mean, I have proposed in the budget that there be $240,000 set aside for upgrading our recycling program. There are council members that don't agree and think we should not do that.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that's something to discuss potentially.
Gotcha. Okay, so just like, yeah, just generally, I think as long as we're united and we're able to get something done together and we have maybe a vision of what our goal is as a group, I think those would be major milestones. You know, if we're able to even just come up with a mission statement, like we should be proud of ourselves being able to do that. That's for a group of people who don't really have any experience working with each other yet, like that would be quite an accomplishment. Anyway, thank you.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you. Mandy?
Yeah, I agree. I think Jackie brought up a good point that maybe we need to figure out what the goal of the group is or the mission in terms of sustainability so that we don't get overwhelmed. And I sent some examples from other cities, including ones around us via email. So I think that would be a good step that we could take, but that could take a while. So there's clearly a lot of interest. I think this recycling project sounds like it would be a great quick win if I guess a little bit it's out of our control. So I guess depending on whether we can get the funding we need. So that seems like a good option. I still really think if we thought about, I think maybe Mayor Brennan, this might be, I don't know if we can join as a group or if it just has to be you, but I think Power Clean Future Ohio would be a really great option for us because they work with cities all the time on helping them reduce their dependence on carbon, fossil fuels. So we wouldn't have to be kind of floundering around like, well, what should we do? They could help us based on our needs and the interest in our city, decide what to do about that issue. Because I think that's something we should really consider is how we can reduce our dependence on fossil fuels as a city.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mandy. Michael. Okay. Or maybe we'll get back to Michael later.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Now.
My hands were wet. I apologize. Yeah, I think my main priority, I think, for this particular meeting is, I think a lot of people have said this, like Joshua, like a lot of people said this, but like just really diving into some of the organizational structure of this group, you know, like how do we want to conduct ourselves? Like, I think setting goals before we understand how what we are sort of like calling ourselves to do is maybe putting the cart before the horse. So hopefully in this meeting we can have a deeper conversation of just charter, organization, and really sort of like the vision from you. You know, I think you called Tokyo together, and I just like to like learn more just about like what exactly you want us to produce at the end of the day.
Sure, sure. Yeah, well, one of the things to keep in mind here is that this is an advisory group. If the group were given actual powers, then we would have to adhere to public meeting rules and so on. And right now, you know, given where we've been in the pandemic, we wanted to be able to meet in a way that online that was permissible. So when it comes to, you know, a mission statement or a charter or something like that, I mean, keep in mind that these are aspirational things, and then we can try to, you know, work on things as far as advancing whatever matters we as a group would think would be beneficial in the community. But as far as actually being a decision-making body, that's not really what this is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I completely agree with that. That's
Okay.
completely understandable. But I mean, you know, it definitely makes sense that we are a group of private citizens who you are talking to, just kind of on the side. But if you want to produce something more than that, I think we ourselves would have to get more organized, like outside of you to produce something.
Right. There could be a way that this transforms into something more like that, in which case, you know, there may be other rules then that go with it. But right now, to keep it kind of loose and be able to do this online, it's think of it more in terms of advisory.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Okay, fair enough.
Is it Elizabeth, Ms. Engelhardt?
Yeah. it's
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Okay. All right. Um,
Well,
what do you-
going
yeah.
back to the original question, I feel like many people that starting with recycling is a good idea. It seems the most practical, but there is kind of a conundrum here of the definition of what we are that I see also. In addition to looking at what the definition of sustainability is and what it encompasses, but also first it was called the Citizens Committee. Then it was the Mayor's Citizens Committee. And then only this week, when I got the email from Ben, when we all got the email from Ben, it became an advisory committee. Now, in my understanding of governmental law, that advisory committees report to and give advice and or findings to city councils in many cities, in many communities across the country.
Yeah, that's not what
So-
this is, because if it were, it would have to be a
Right.
public meeting and we'd have to follow public meeting law.
Right, exactly. So I don't know if we need to just go back. If it's a citizens committee,
Mhm.
that means it's non-governmental. A
Right.
citizens committee doesn't report to local, state, or federal government. So a citizens committee is more independent. So you know, I'm just looking at that, if we could become more clearly defined. And I agree that that a mission statement definitely is a good idea for a sustainability citizens committee, that we do have a mission statement. I think that is really very, very important. And then starting with this particular recycling, if we have to go over that bridge of getting the council on board to approve the money to get the cart, to buy the carts, right? It's mostly getting the carts for every household so we can recycle in one of those carts. If we're promoting that first, we need to take a part in probably going to that council meeting when you vote on that, to stand up and speak in support of getting these carts in, so we can jettison those blue bags, which I had to put out again today.
Yeah. I mean, whether it is a matter of going to meetings, sure. It's also a matter of simply contacting your council members and letting them know that this is important. But, you know, it's all those things. So, you know, I wouldn't do one without the other, but they're all possibilities. I mean, I think this is something where the council needs to hear that this is important.
There are
go.
certain members of council who are participating on this committee. But
Yeah.
is that,
Mhm.
is that I know Brian appears to be established on that.
Mhm.
Justin is on that.
No, Justin Gould is not part of it.
Okay,
No, I
There-
mean,
there- There's,
I-
there's a little bit of a difficult,
mhm.
the list that was added, this is to make a long story short, my email and Justin's email for the county is very similar. It's the same except of one character.
oh,
So
goodness.
my name is not on the list for the committee, but Justin's is.
Oh,
And I
so there's
think
a
that's
mix-up.
the error.
Okay.
Okay,
I
Okay.
can, if this is,
All right.
hi, this is Rebecca Slifer. I just sent a note to the folks whose names I have of, I talked to Brian and I was like, is there an agenda or anything for this evening? So I would agree with you, Jackie. It seems like I'm a little new, I'm new, and I'm a little confused, like who's on the committee and how the group will kind of just stay connected to each other and share ideas and so forth. So if I would agree that we need to establish someone who, and to kind of keep our sort of a quasi project manager, right? Like who's going to keep notes and who's going to make sure everyone's communicated to and so forth. Which I am glad to do. It's now that I brought that up, I guess I just voluntold myself. So, but I'm glad to do that. But I just need a little bit of help here to just kind of keep everyone connected and on the same page. So I think we have a lot of, it sounds like a lot of good ideas, but agenda wise, sustainability, it seems like it's bigger than recycling. And it's, seems like there's systemic, like big things like Mandy said, like real greenhouse gas is a huge issue. And then there's a lot of things kind of through the food chain that can be changed. And there's a lot of stuff that there's already done in other cities in the county level. So we don't have to reinvent any wheels. We can hopefully leverage a lot of what's already been done so we don't have to use resources that are limited, right? So
I would think as we establish ourselves and determine where we're going with this, and perhaps have some limitations as to the scope, lay out which things we're going to be doing first. And you want to go for the quick win, I think, and perhaps get a little PR on what we're doing. But once we can establish ourselves and what we're doing as a committee, then I think we can also reach out to some neighboring communities that are doing some things that might be good for us and for them working together. As had been mentioned in Mandy's letter. Maybe not everybody got a chance to see that. I want to look at it again, but I saw how it was mentioning about Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights, and was it Lakewood that you had said also? And but particularly those that are close to us, like Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights, I think might be especially good to reach out to. But it's like you got to crawl before you walk. So we have to know what we're doing before we can align ourselves with adjoining communities.
Yeah, I mean, we really are just getting started. So, all right. I know there are a couple folks we haven't heard from yet, like Jim and Matt. And Matt, I know this is your first time here. Jim, I know that you wrote quite a bit. Is there anything you'd like to bring up at this juncture?
Well, I would echo what Jackie Gould said. which is that I have no idea what sustainability means. I have no idea what 12 people in University Heights are going to do to change the sustainability of an entire culture that is built around non-sustainable living habits, automobile transportation, industrial agriculture, just to name two. And I also am hyper aware of the politics of University Heights and its city council. I would remind people that last year, the city council twice passed resolutions or actually authorizing funds for a mail, US Post Office mail survey of citizens about whether to continue backyard pickup. And I have already predicted on my little Facebook page that that is going to raise itself yet again in connection with what we are calling recycling. And by recycling, what do we mean? I think what we really mean is the mayor's very specific suggestion of curbside pickups and dedicated recycling bins, which will presumably enable or facilitate more people putting in more recyclables. I would also predict that a lot of people will continue to stuff those bins as they do their blue bags with anything that looks vaguely plastic or that has a little, triangle on it with a number in the middle, which seems to be saying recycle me, but in fact, in almost every single case is not recyclable. Maybe it once was, once upon a time, isn't now. The only plastic containers that I know of that are consistently recyclable are milk bottles and juice bottles. I'm talking about plastic. So my point is, I don't really see why this committee, well, let me rephrase. What would this committee do about recycling that isn't already been started by the mayor in the budget?
Well, isn't recycling a component of an overall sustainability plan? Because when I look at and back to Jackie's original question, I think sustainability is much bigger than just recycling, right? It's the greenhouse gas emissions, it's things like sustainable gardening, like Jeff mentioned with the Rust Belt Riders. So it's the things like little things, right? Like how frequently you're mowing your lawn and how that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. And so I think there's probably some baby steps that we can take. And recycling, I think, one component of a larger sustainability picture that we can do, and that things we can do to make our community more sustainable.
Okay, but what can we do about recycling?
I think, well, there's a lot you can do about recycling. I don't know that there's just one thing.
Well, name one thing this committee can do.
Help educate people on what's recyclable.
Right.
Yeah, Jackie's absolutely right. We need to, I noticed in reading and getting some different materials this week from different sources, how our community, and this is probably representative of most communities, but seeing as how we're the third worst in Cuyahoga County, maybe we're not up on reading things. There is so much information that's available on the Cuyahoga Recycles site, and people don't avail themselves of that information to know about it. Plus,
I think it's Jeff, it's even more than that. I took a course with Cuyahoga Recycles, 4 weeks. I think it was, 8 to 18 hours. And they teach you what is recyclable and what's not. But I have to tell you, when I get a new bottle in my kitchen from the grocery store, I have to sometimes ask, gosh, is this recyclable or not? And it's a constant educational process that people have to be actively involved in. All of us, I think, I'm not going to say all of us, many people want to do the right thing, but they do what the recycling people call wish cycling, which means they put something in a bag and they hope that somebody down the road is going to look at it and make that decision for them. But what that really does is that eliminates that bag of recycling that gets thrown in the trash and nothing happens. So I think there's an educational piece for many people that want to do the right thing and our city in our city. I can't say enough about how I think Elizabeth talked about last week that she has people who call her and ask her, what is this recyclable or not? That will happen on and on and on and on and on because there's so many different packages, there's so many different plastics, there's so many different metals that you have to constantly be on top of it. So I can't say enough about education and making it possible for people to do the right thing. And I think they want to do the right thing.
And maybe that's part of what we're supposed to be doing, Jackie, is as a committee, is we have to find a means to help to inform and educate University Heights, which is it's going to be a very trying thing to do. But you know, that's something that we want to learn for ourselves, and we want to help to inform our neighbors. Do it by street, do it by the entire city. But we've got a number of us that have that interest, and once we can learn and get more informed, we can help to inform others.
And I think we did this greening project when I lived downtown in our condo building of 42 units. So just to give you an idea of the magnitude of scale, right? So 42 people who lived in one building together, and we're going to try and master recycling. And we still had struggles. But there were people from the solid waste district who came out and gave us seminars and lectures with regular, like quarterly. It was like, hey, we got to have that lady come out and kind of re-explain things and what we're doing. And they, they don't charge us. They were great. So, it does seem like the world changes frequently in recycling land is the net of that conversation. But yeah, so I guess, recycling is a piece of it, but Josh, what did you say about Mandy's links?
Sorry, I don't mean to have a side conversation. That's my bad.
No, it's okay.
I was just, it's not, well, okay. Well, I was just saying that I think the information related to what Chapel Hill, sorry, I went from Chapel Hill, to what the other committees in our area, specifically Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights, are doing. I think those ones might, we might be able to gain some insight from some of the things that they're doing, even just to understand what's the scope of the work that they do. And, do they just do work on policy? Are they just or do they actually do proper projects? And yeah, I think it might be interesting to see what they do and learn from them a little bit, just because they have some similar populations to the folks living here, and they have perhaps a very similar reality to ours. And so we don't necessarily have to reinvent everything. I know, we can, we definitely can, but we may get a step up if we look a little bit outside ourselves. Just a thought.
I was curious, just a quick question, Mayor, who does the best recycling? I want to know who the top people are.
I don't have that list in front of me, but there is a list, and yeah, I one of the things that we were talking about, I know that came up on the email was setting up a Google Drive where people could share some resources, and I could upload that list. There's a list published by by the solid waste district.
Solid.
That goes over, percentage of your waste, which is recycled, percentage which is composted. Because of the yard waste program, our composting numbers are respectable. They could be better, but they're respectable. But the recycling numbers are not so good. But there are other places that recycle a little better, but maybe their composting numbers aren't as good.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yeah.
can you?
May I ask a question of the mayor? Just when you say our recycling numbers are good, bad, or indifferent,
Mhm.
I know for a fact that in my own household,
Mhm.
there are some people, especially over the Christmas holidays, there were some people, outlanders, foreigners, who knows where they're from,
Mhm.
who were putting all manner of things in the blue bag. And I was too polite to pull out the directive and explain to them, hey, don't you dare put that clamshell in the blue bag because it can't be recycled. So my question is, when you say our recycling numbers are poor, are you talking about the stuff that starts out in a blue bag, the stuff that makes it from the blue bag to the recycling plant, the stuff that comes out of the, you know what I mean? What are we talking about there?
Well, what I'm talking about is the percentage of our solid waste which is recycled. Now, maybe that begs the question somewhat with regard to, what items, if, how much that we send to Kimball for processing, how much of it is actually properly processed as opposed to landfilled. And then what is the percentage? What number are they taking? But I think it's based upon the tons of recycling. That's something that perhaps we can explore a little deeper to get a better sense of what that number is. I know Elizabeth's been trying to get in here, so I
I'm
want to.
trying. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with Jackie. It seems like I always agree with Jackie, but I agree with Jackie that it's very, very difficult. I've been to the solid waste workshop, not as many hours as you, Jackie, but I have been. And what we can do with recycling is be more specific. Let the members of the community know what can be recycled. You just can't say bottles and jugs, plastic bottles and jugs, because it's really not just that. And I frequently call up the waste district. I call them up. I mean, you can put in pump bottles, plastic pump bottles that have a little pump on the top. You can do that. It's the shape of it. It's the shape of it because the machine has to go on like this, right? It has to link on the top. So it has to be narrow at the top for the machine to get on. And this is how it was explained to me. Down at the recycling center, the machine clamps onto the top. So most people do not understand that. We have to not just explain that specifically, but then show pictures of examples, including, the pump on the top and anything that narrows on the top. So it's so subtle, it's so discreet. You can have a plastic peanut butter jar, but that's not narrow on the top. You can't recycle it. You can't recycle so many things that you get in the store. So what is your option? Your option is to not buy those things that come in containers that you can't recycle. You start buying different things.
Yeah.
But we could at least come out with a sheet that doesn't just and jugs. People don't get that. They don't understand what that means. Believe me, I know that from the questions I get. And absolutely, people in University Heights want to recycle. They do.
Yeah, I think in furtherance of your point, when the county puts out that there are 5 basic items that should be recycled, candidly, they're dumbing it down a little bit, so that if there are a few things that could have been recycled that don't make it in their view, that's a little bit better than filling up with a bunch of wish cycle items. So, I think there is a space where people can be better educated that, well, it's these 5 items that they're focusing on, but really these other things are things that you may be able to put in for this reason, or here's some things that may seem like you could, but you couldn't, like the jar you were talking about.
I think if we make it more clear for citizens in the community of what they can recycle, And I certainly, I have no problem with letting everybody in my neighborhood know specifically. You know, we have an email system around a square block area. We're very close community over here, Glendon, Silsbee, and Washington. And we communicate with each other. And I could definitely, you know, that's really how you spread word around a small community like University Heights.
Can I just add one thing, and then I promise to mute myself forever. Yeah, that's,
All right,
you're
Steve,
right.
and then we're gonna, and then we're gonna
You're
recognize
not
Andy after that,
telling
because I know she's been patiently
But-
waiting for your hand.
I wonder, why are we focused exclusively here on what we citizens are meant to do, what hoops we have to go through, rather than focusing on the source of the problem, which is too much plastic. And I am old enough to recall when all that plastic was not in use. Milk used to come in glass bottles, which were recycled in the form of the dairy taking them back and washing them, I guess, and bringing fresh milk. And so I can think of a list of things that Whole Foods and Heinen's are not allowed to sell. And I won't go into what that might be, but we can all imagine. Why are they allowed to put things in these single-use clamshell containers, fairly recent onto the market? Why are they allowed to use single-use grocery bags? Why are all these things coming? The other day I was in Trader Joe's. They had a display of soup, vegetable soup. Fine. The reason I bought a jar is because it was in a glass jar. Yeah, it was all right. But my point is that there's nothing inevitable about all this plastic starting out. And I seriously doubt that we're going to get very many people to spend 18 hours at the Recycling Institute to learn, oh, the peanut butter, that, you know, in the wrong shape. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. It really isn't going to happen. And I don't think it's going to make a material difference. So I would be much happier myself if we focused on an alliance with other communities in telling grocery stores, hey, stop selling the plastic. And whether or not it's a government regulation or a consumer boycott or a combination of things, you know, I don't know. But, well, all right. I said I would shut up, and so.
Okay.
Jim,
Well,
I think that's a great idea. And it takes me all the way back to the beginning. If we focused on recycling, all the ripples of that are things like what you're talking about, getting rid of plastic, the plastic bags, the plastic containers, all of that stuff. There's sort of a ripple effect. But if we're going to do anything, we're going to have to focus on something. We're going to have to, you know, try to look at a few things that we can really do something about. I can't agree with you more. The ambassadorship that I took this course for was to recycle, but my goal for myself was to reduce plastic. So I try not to buy clamshells. I try not to buy stuff, but it's an awareness that you have to come to, not just, you know, I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna call
Somebody's
on
got their
Mandy
hand up.
because Mandy's been really patient. Then I'm gonna go to Matt and then to Joshua.
Sorry.
So Mandy,
that's-
you have the floor.
It's okay. Yeah, I totally agree about the plastic stuff. And I think one thing is that, like at Whole Foods, for example, they used to have a lot more things in bulk, but now they don't, and they seem afraid of liability. And I think some communities and other places, like in California, have laws that prevent them from being liable if other people bring their own containers in. So that's something we could think about. But I do think that it's good for us to be focused, and recycling is clearly something we should focus on. But I do think that climate change is the really, really big, terrible thing that's facing us. And all of the plastic waste and all of that will pale in comparison to the really bad things that will happen if we don't address climate change. So I think we should consider making that part of our focus as well. But kind of the original reason I raised my hand was because we were talking about education, and I think that could be something that isn't that difficult, is kind of providing the platform or the organizational structure to just educate University Heights citizens about a number of things, including recycling. We clearly have some experts even on this committee, but other things too. There are a lot of groups and organizations in our community. So instead of coming up with programming ourselves, we can really just highlight those people and give them a platform to talk about what they do. Kind of like we talked about Rust Belt Riders. I would love to hear more about what they do. So maybe that's something we can organize as a group.
Thank you.
Brian,
Oh.
nice to see you. And did you want to, I know we had been communicating about Rust Belt Riders. This
Yeah,
might be the
I'll just say
perfect
something
opportunity.
really quick. You know, there have been some talk on getting a central collecting area for Rust Belt Riders within University Heights. I reached out to someone there, and they shared that interest and even had their eyes on the Walt, like we're possibly thinking of a location for pickup. So connected them with the mayor, the administration. So hopefully there'll be a meeting to get that process going. But I think there's shared interest between folks here, the city and Rust Belt Riders to bring us on as a city for collection. So
Thank you, Brian. Matt, you've been patiently waiting and you haven't had an opportunity to speak yet. So I want to recognize you and please take the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So, hi, everybody. I'm Matt. I'm Brian's neighbor. He's my neighbor. That was funny when he had the signs up because he was my neighbor. So, thanks for the invite to this committee. Sustainability and climate change has been an interest of mine over the last few years, as I'm sure my neighbors can attest to. And it's actually a lot of fun just hearing it go back and forth, confirming that I'm not crazy, that Jim, yes, I also go to the grocery store and try and decide, well, this one's in glass, so I'll buy that. I know I can recycle it, or, hey, these vegetables aren't wrapped at all. Great, I'll put it in my reusable bag, no plastic there. So thanks for confirming that, as well as I think Jackie, you're our recycling chief here, as far as getting in the same discussions with my wife, like, hey, what did the website say? Can we put this? No, you can't put that in the bin. Okay, it's good. So I think these issues are out there, and I've learned myself, again, this isn't an area of expertise, but I've educated myself a lot about things over the last couple of years, and some of it has been shocking. And I think, again, I know we're still trying to find kind of the purpose of this committee, but from what I'm hearing, one suggestion or a goal, and Brian and Mr. Mayor, you can tell us how this would work, but I think it would be interesting to put together an initiative where we have use the WALT as a fair, as a sustainability fair, where we have some of the county experts on recycling do some education and teaching for people, or we have Rust Belt Riders, have a booth there and talk about what they do. But I like that we're talking recycling, because that's something the city can do. But I also agree with, I think Mandy was mentioning, there's so many other things that we do that will have such a bigger impact on climate change, on getting us off fossil fuels, on putting solar on your house, on putting, switching to electric vehicles. I would love to see, and how much of that can be the city do, or can, individual actions have to do that. But, maybe there are things that the city could do. Maybe the city could offer, tax breaks or incentives, or local banks could offer, special interest loans for people that, want to do those things. And no self-interest. I've already done those things to my house. Right. So, I would love to see Silsbee, who has, south facing roofs at the perfect degrees for Cleveland at 45 degrees. I mean, the amount of solar that we could do, the carbon impact, if we got 10 of those houses to, fill up with solar panels, the carbon impact you would have on that would probably be, more than the whole street of recycling perfect, it's just much more bigger bang for your buck. So, I think it would be interesting to see how our city could champion these things that have been difficult on the even state or federal level, and be out there as an example of there's just so much more for sustainability than just recycling the right way, which is difficult enough to do, that we can maybe incentivize or at least educate people on. So again, I thanks for the invite. These are just some of my ideas. I'd like to participate as much as I can. Sometimes I work nights and evenings, so I don't know how often I'll be able to participate, but I know how to get a hold of Brian if I need to suggest anything.
Hey, Matt, I have to bring this up, and I'm sorry I know Josh has his hand up, but I know the neighbors on each side of us are looking at putting in new garages. And one of the things that comes up is I need a way I can be able to charge my electric car, right? And so that is a city thing, right? Like, well, what city building code, and bear with me, I'm not a code expert and I'm not a building expert. I'm just, know a lot of gossip. So, I want to build a garage, but is there a way we can, do it, for what we need to make sure that if somebody has to make a garage upgrade or wants to redo their garage, that they can be able to have it to charge their car, right? Because right now I'm like, if I had to set up electricity in my car to charge the car, can I do that? I don't even really know. So I think you're spot on. There's some really, like, I know the neighbor on the other side, he's got a Tesla and he's like, well, we have to put in a new garage so we can charge the Tesla. And I'm like, yeah, I am so far behind the times. But that's, I think, got to be part of our sustainability effort, is really like, what are we doing with those big energy issues that we're concerned about too?
Just to answer your question on a couple of those things is, and some of that is education too. You actually don't need a new outlet. You can charge your car on a regular outlet. You just need an outlet in your garage. You can charge it faster if you put a dryer outlet, which is what I had done by a local electric company that costs a couple $100, but I was having some electric work. So you don't need an entire new garage. All you need is an outlet. But those are education things. And I absolutely agree. Those are things I think citywide could do, or we could advise or suggest to the mayor and to council, if we're having new codes for new garages, let's put in code that it should have a, 240 outlet for, electric cars. Those are little things. See, it sounds like little things. I'm sure it's a bigger thing than that, but.
Right, but then there's like the Home Repair Resource Center, which could be a resource we could leverage to help kind of facilitate some of that. So it sounds like we just have to, keep all the right people connected on some of these options too. I'm sorry, Josh. I know you've had your hand up forever. Sorry.
Okay, Josh, you want to take the floor?
Yeah, no problem. Don't worry about it. Yeah, there was a couple of thoughts that came up as people were talking. One was incentivizing businesses related to like recycling and clamshells and that kind of stuff. And just speaking from experience, growing microgreens and packaging microgreens, and like that's something that I've had to think about a lot. And so going into that whole process, because I didn't understand the whole process of recycling until it was just explained earlier today with the clamshells. Because I, for a long time was trying to be like, okay, do I go bioplastics? Do I go with like recycled plastic that can be re-recycled and that kind of thing? But it doesn't matter because it's a clamshell, so it can't actually be recycled. So like I have like several boxes of these clamshells that I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do in the future? And luckily, a couple of my neighbors that buy from me, they do give me glass things that I can use. But anyway, the point of getting into that is just if there were incentives for businesses like ours that would make it so that we could produce or provide something that is a little bit better. I have spoken with Rust Belt Riders specifically about that, and they do compost a very specific type of plastic clamshell. It's a bioplastic, but it has to be of a certain grade. And so I was able to find it, but again, it's like an incentive thing because it's more expensive and it's harder to find. The other thing that came up was the discussion on climate change and the real impact. I think it's important. It's nice to like, where can we put our energy so that we have the most impact? And so one thought was brought up related to climate change and solar energy and electric cars. And I'm just working on a project right now through video editing for a group in Arizona that's about lithium mining. And actually, you know, one of the things that's coming up in this project is that when turning to electric vehicles and solar energy, it requires resources that destroy some ecosystems in finding those resources. And so not to get into that whole argument about like, well, what's good, what's not, but I'm just thinking about what is something easier that's accessible to everyone. Like I might not be able to afford an electric car or solar panels. I know there's like incentives for that as well. But the point is, things like, I know people have brought up ecological landscaping, and there's a term regenerative landscaping that's being thrown around, in regenerative agriculture. And this is an idea of just, you know, planting native plants and just planting plants instead of grass, like as much as you can, because these plants are like taking carbon from the atmosphere and they put it into the soil. And also native plants will encourage our local wildlife. It will make sure that our birds are fed, our insects are fed, and it just goes up the food chain from there. That's my thoughts. Thank you. Sorry.
All right, thanks. John.
Just on that topic that Joshua brought up, I've thought before about putting other stuff in my front yard, whatever. Does the city have anything that would forbid that, Mayor, that you know of? I mean, I've seen some places in Cleveland Heights that their entire front yard, you know, there's not a blade of grass in it. There's a lot of different native plants and different things. Is that a doable thing here in the city? And if it is, you know, again, that's something we could publicize and try to get people to do more of.
I think it is, but and there are a few homes. There's a couple over on Eaton, and I think if you look over on Canterbury, you'll see, you know, some homes that have really deliberately done things that are other than just having traditional lawns, and that's permissible. What sometimes happens though is sometimes you'll get somebody who states that that's their intention, and then really what they're doing is they're just letting their lawn run wild without any particular care. And then the neighbors start to complain, and the housing inspectors see what they just view as what they perceive to be a unkempt lawn, as opposed to an effort at doing something sustainable. So there's probably a line between doing something that is deliberate and obvious versus something that looks like, well, neglect. And I'm not saying that there aren't instances where one could look like the other, especially if you're new at it. I think a lot of that is communication. If you get a notice from the city saying that you need to do something about your lawn, then it's not a matter of giving up and just mowing everything down. It's a matter of reaching back out to the city and saying, hey, I'm trying to do something here, and then working together about what it is that you're trying to accomplish so that we understand too. And if we have folks who are in the community doing this kind of thing and doing it successfully, then there may even be a way of coordinating, getting people to meet and sharing information about how to go about doing that in a productive, meaningful way.
I just jump in just for a
Sure,
second here.
right.
I just shared out a link to to Ecological Heights. They have a Heights native pollinator pathway. I don't know if you call it a program, but it basically where they've been encouraging planting native wildlife in your targeting specifically the tree lawn of your yard.
Go for that.
It's just something that's, you know, an initial target to go at. So yeah, as the
They were
mayor
talking
said,
about backyards and tree lawns.
yeah. So there's a lot of good
And,
information on the page I put out there.
Elizabeth.
Well, this is kind of my bailiwick here is lawns and the ugly history behind the lawns. And what's happened is it's almost like brainwashing people in the United States to putting on these postage stamps in the front of our houses. This foreign material, no grass is native. None of the grass that people put in their lawns is native to the United States at all. It's an invention of golf courses in the 1800s, late 1700s, 1800s in this country that pushed it forward through garden and community groups of wealthy people in the United States that went ahead and thought they could have the gardens, give prizes to people who were working class to build themselves up to be more like, quote, their betters by having these uniform lawns in the front lawn as a really very ugly classist history. As far as I could see from all the research I've done on the history of the lawn. And to get people out of that headset is an utterly Herculean task because it's been going on for so many decades and people are so attached to their lawns. All you have to do is observe going down up and down the streets of University Heights of the obsession with front lawns that many people have. It's going to take a lot of work for people to understand that these really aren't sustainable postage stamps in front of our houses with the amount of chemicals that are put on and the runoff and the work that's put into it that could be refocused into something more natural and without using the chemicals or without using the fertilizer. It really takes a lot of work. It's not going to be easy.
Elizabeth, if we can tie it to money, we can make it work.
Yeah, well, it is a whole lot cheaper to do it naturally.
I'm good at putting dollar values on things, so let's stay in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so just kind of organizationally, I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that we're interested in covering, but I think maybe it would be a nice idea to maybe pick a couple of things that we want to work on to begin with while we move towards doing some other things beyond that. At least that's one possibility. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities that have been put forth here. How do you see it? How do you see where we go from here?
Can I ask, Mayor, I guess Jim kind of did already ask this, but like, if we were going to tackle recycling as a goal, what would this committee specifically be doing? Just like trying to convince the council to, approve the funding for that, or would there be other things that we need to do?
Well, it could take some different forms. It could involve lobbying the council. It could involve promoting awareness of the possibility of making this switch, but that it's not certain, and that if it's important to people, that they speak up and say so. That would be one thing. I mean, there are a lot of things that we want to do, and yet one of the most basic things we can do that most communities have that we don't is they've moved to loose recycling and we haven't. So that's a very, square one kind of thing we could be doing. And if we did that, then from there, we could work on a lot of other things besides. I mean, encouraging people to use less plastic, as Jim was saying. and being mindful of our practices. I mean, there is this big sense in this country that, well, if we just have the right recycling bin and we're able to put everything in there, then we can just buy whatever we want. But that's really not true. That's really not it's really not sustainable to do that. But right now, we even the things that we ought to be able to recycle, we're not recycling well. We're putting things into a plastic bag that gets torn open and then thrown away, and that's something that we got to move beyond.
Well, how can we as a community, as a committee, help to guide our city towards more sustainable practices, specifically in this case, recycling? How do we establish that? We have to learn ourselves. We've got too many things that we're talking about that are all important. But I think we have to lay out just a few things, and recycling appears to be probably number one. But I get the feeling, and Mayor, please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but if this is going to take an extended period of time to establish anything with council, do we also try to guide the city towards better practices under the system that we have now, short of that?
Mhm. Well, I wouldn't want to invest a lot of effort into the current bagged recycling system, if that's what you're getting at.
Well, not so much just that, but at least in learning of the importance of recycling, and in doing it properly, at the same time working towards a better system. Certainly those couple of pictures that have been out in social media, one showing the overflowing can at City Hall, and the other showing all the blue bags piled up on the street looking ugly, may have some impact, and maybe that needs to be something to somehow get the word out to more people, because we're just a limited number of people here, but in turn we want to get more people to know about it, to get say more information in the Sun Press or the Heights Observer, to get more people aware of doing the right thing as far as recycling is concerned.
And we have a lot of folks, right? You've got a big committee, and I know, Brian, I said I was gonna just listen, but would it be, it sounds like there's like some two really strong ideas, right? Around, we want to have some governance, right? Advocacy, stewardship, the things that Josh has added to the chat window, and then have some mini teams around the topics of interest, right? There's clearly folks who are very interested in recycling. There's some folks who have some interest in other areas like the greenhouse gas emissions and things around those other topics, right? That seem like they would maybe be longer term. And there's some communications issues. There's some education issues, right? So it seems like we could bucket our efforts, right? And or at least come up with the topics where we said, have interests. If you want to email your contact, I'll put our contact and here's what I'm interested in, and then we can maybe try and make some mini teams within our committee, because I'm sure there's somebody on this team who's really great at creating websites, and there's also somebody who's really great at getting on the phone and talking to the newspaper, so we can kind of make our time together and our efforts most efficient.
Yeah, I mean, from what you're saying, Rebecca, and from some of the things that are also, being said in the chat, I think I would tend to agree that there's probably some merit to the idea of breaking out into mini teams. We could have somebody that's kind of, leading the way. We could also have, if certain people wanted to volunteer to take up a particular issue, and then we kind of loosely have people join that person on that mini team for that issue, and then work out some action items for each of those things.
If I could propose something, I mean, we've been
Yeah.
covering an awful lot of topics today, and from detailed to big picture. What I would like to propose is that everybody on this committee
Mhm.
contact council members in the following week, or at least before our next meeting, and tell them we are very interested in this recycling program that the mayor has proposed and highly in favor of it. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. We can all do that. It doesn't take a lot of effort. And, what they hear from, what is 12 of us, that's probably as many as chime in on any kind of issue coming before the council. So it might have an impact right there. And if you get a couple of your neighbors to do the same thing, hey, great.
Yeah, I lead a block party, and we talk about that almost every time we have a block party, is what is our city doing for recycling? And I have an email list, and I can ask them to call the council. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, that sounds like something everybody could do. Yeah. And that personal touch is something that, I think people are responsive to, council members too. Brian, what do you think?
I've put out there what I think on it already.
But I mean is, yeah, I mean, I know why you're here.
Well, you got my vote.
But what I mean, Brian, is that I can, speaking for myself, it's meaningful to me when somebody reaches out. It's meaningful when somebody
It is.
emails. It's
Yeah.
meaningful when somebody writes a letter. It's meaningful when somebody calls me. And, the direct contact that way, whether it's an email, a letter, a phone call, is more meaningful than like a social media post. Now, a social media post can sometimes gather attention. It kind of have an effect where people are kind of talking at each other about these sorts of things, but they don't necessarily get the attention of our
Mhm.
elected officials. And I say that as an elected official,
Right.
that hearing from someone and having a conversation, or even if it's not a conversation as much as it's simply, hey, I just want you to know I support this and I hope you will too, for 1, 2, 3 reasons, then as John said, that's something that everybody here could do. And contacting folks on council and members of the finance committee in particular would be a positive thing, and would help
Yeah.
maybe move along the idea that this is an important thing to the community.
Yeah.
Mayor, is there somewhere that we can read, and maybe I should have read this, but I didn't, but read your plan for recycling so that I can share that with other
Well,
people?
Yeah, on the mayor's page is a narrative about the administration's proposed budget, and there's a page in that 14-page narrative on the acquisition of recycling carts.
Okay,
So, and that's on the mayor's page on the city website.
okay.
Okay.
That was also on your Facebook page, right?
Right. Yeah, I also put it on my Facebook page, and Councilperson King also wrote something a couple days ago that was very good, and that was on his Facebook page. And I haven't shared that directly, but I liked it, and I'm going to be writing something more myself to put out on social media with regard to the carts and their importance, and how I've heard from all of you and from many others who aren't on this committee who support that idea.
Yeah. To reinforce, I mean, I did jokingly say that I've said what I feel about this. Hearing from people exactly what they're thinking is very very persuasive. So I would encourage folks to and I've been planning to reach out to some of the people who have responded to my responded positively to the post I had to say, hey, would you speak to council?
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a factual question about your proposal?
Sure.
As I understand it,
Mhm.
the core problem here is not whether citizens put stuff in blue bags, but it's the fact that the two bins mounted on front of the Kubotas are not big enough to accommodate all the blue bags. And so a large number of them get put into the back, never to see the light of day again.
Those are different problems, but they're all problems. Yes.
Yeah. So my point is maybe the problem with our low ranking in recycling has to do with the design of the Kubotas, rather than, that we don't have enough space on the Kubotas to hold the recycling bags.
Mhm. Well, that is part of the problem. And part of the design of the Kubota is that it's got to be compact enough to be operable. We have some backyards that are so tight that if you put a larger bin on the front, you wouldn't be able to maneuver the Kubota back there. And that has been something that we've looked at. But it's also that some items like flattened cardboard don't easily fit in that bin up the front. So it's not unusual to see our employees take flattened cardboard and throw it in the back where it's never then retrieved, because we simply don't give them the tools needed to handle this. Now, if we had a larger bin that we gave everybody, it would be easier to put all those things, without a blue bag into that bin and then empty that bin directly into a recycling truck and not use.
I assure you, I am not a fan of the Kubota system. I am not a fan of the city council's refusal to cope with that. And I am not a fan of what I predict will be a continuing refusal to cope with that. So I guess I'm asking, is the problem we're dealing with here recycling, or is it the particulars of backyard pickup? And maybe that's where we ought to be focusing our attention here.
Well,
That's not true.
yeah, I mean, it's right now we have kind of a hybrid system anyway, Jim. We put our yard waste on the curb, and we have backyard pickup for rubbish. But we need our rubbish picked up every week. Whereas with recycling, depending on how much you have, you might not take your cart down on a particular week, and you may skip a particular week if it's just harsh weather and you don't want to have to maneuver the cart around. I could see people doing that. I could see with some of the snow we've had that people might be less inclined to put the cart out. And if you've got a 64-gallon cart, you might not fill it right away. But then what we're doing is we're stopping the use of the blue bags, and we are and we have less of a margin of error when it comes to things that end up in the back of a recycle truck or back of the Kubota versus things that end up in the cart, and then those things go directly into a recycle truck. I tend to think that going to loose recycling, avoiding the bag, and having things that go directly into a truck is going to improve our numbers considerably, even before we just go and educate folks about what can be better recycled. That will help too, of course. But just the mechanisms we use for pickup and will be helpful here, and we can do that without changing the entire system.
Would it be possible for people to buy their own recycling bins, maybe at a discounted price negotiated by the city?
I don't think that's practical, because we need 4,000 recycling bins, and if we rely on people to buy their own, I don't know how many people would really buy one, or would buy the right one. And we can buy 4,000 bins and distribute them, but we can't buy 4,000 bins and put them in a warehouse and have people, buy them, one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah. As it is, we're only looking at buying 4,000 bins. It's not like, city of Cleveland quantities or something, or Parma quantities for that matter.
So our immediate neighbors have systems for collecting, both trash and recycling, and some have their own, do their own work, and some have private contractors do that. Mayor, maybe you can help to inform us as to your knowledge about our neighbors and what they're doing, and how what you had proposed compares to that.
Well, which neighbors are you referring to?
Well, thinking Beechwood,
Okay.
South Euclid, Cleveland Heights, I know is looking to get into something that they have not done as yet. And Shaker, I think, was hybrid, if I'm correct about that. They're one of the last communities like us that was doing backyard pickup, but if I understand correctly, they've got containers for recycling.
Yes.
Do we really want to get into an entire discussion here on the whole garbage system? I mean, aren't we getting a little off track?
It just goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, there is on our service department page, if you haven't seen it, there's a solid waste study that was completed in 2020 that goes over a lot of what our neighbors do and does a lot of those comparisons. And rather than taking time right now to go over some of those things, some of those highlights, maybe if folks are interested, they could take a look at that on their own time. But yeah, there are different things that are going on, and the city of Cleveland Heights is making some changes, and they all have their own unique aspects. Beechwood's in-house, South Euclid is private. Cleveland Heights is making a change, but they're keeping it in-house. Shaker's in-house, just like we're in-house. Yeah, so. But yeah, if people are interested in reading more about that study is on the service department page of the city's website.
I just want to say one last thing, because I don't want to get into that discussion either, but I guess I'd like to find out, given what we have with the hybrid system, what's working? What cities are working where it works well, or as far as the recycling is concerned, what is working well? Because Cleveland is not working well. Cleveland Heights is not doing all that great. They're sort of up in the air. So what's working?
Well, why don't I locate and upload? I think Ben was either sent or was sending some links regarding a Google Drive. We can get that out, and people can start sharing stuff there. And one of the things that Ben and I can put there is the report from the solid waste district with regard to the different communities and their recycle rates. And we can start there with regard to, who's recycling well, what are they doing? And then go from there. Okay. So yeah, I note to myself on that. Okay. Well, if folks contact council members and have their neighbors do that, I think that would go a long way towards having council members know that it isn't just the mayor who has this wild idea, but that this is something people really support. And of course, that's not the only reason we're here. There are other things we want to do. So getting back to some of the ideas about some of the mini committees or subcommittees. What are some other things that we want to tackle? And who might want to lead up some of those things?
I really like, I don't know whether I'm going to lead it up, but I certainly like the idea of using the Walt as a place when the weather gets nice, of being able to educate, just have a full out opportunity for people to come and read and look and know, about not just recycling, but the rain barrels, all the other things that, not all, but many of the things we're talking about, solar panels, things that we can do to better our community, better our earth. I really like that idea. I think that's a great use of that venue, and I would be happy to participate in that.
Okay. That's kind of the sustainability fair idea. Matt touched on it, and we even touched on it a little bit last time, as I recall.
Right.
So,
We talked
yeah.
about Earth Day.
Earth
Mhm.
Day.
Earth Day.
Yeah.
And something else I might point to that I just thought of. We have a locked bulletin board on the restrooms at the Walt. So if, it's not a lot of space, but, basically I have a little bit of say about what we put in there. So if there's something that we wanted to put in there on these issues that we wanted the community to see, that's one more thing that's available to us. Is people, I do see people read what's in there, especially, when we get better at updating things in there, people notice and then they pay attention to them. So there may be some things we can put in there on these issues, separate from a fair.
That's an easy
And-
spot of what goes in my recycling bin flyer, right?
Yeah.
Would Mike Cook do a weekly article for the Heights paper? Isn't he right?
Heights Observer,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good idea.
yeah. Mike Cook should be putting these things out for us. Isn't he do, isn't that in his role description?
It's part of it is, he does write things for Heights Observer and other press releases and so on. Yeah. And the Heights Observer is published
Yeah, we
monthly.
should Team
So.
up with the green team for Cleveland Heights because we're sister cities, right?
Yeah.
And the
then-
fact that that we share a library, we share a school system, that's something that can be utilized as well to help with that. And we have Friends of the Walt. Is anybody associated with that here?
Oh, yeah.
That would seem to be a natural fit with this group that to work together. Just talking about within our own city, let alone things like the Cleveland Heights Green Team. That would seem to be a logical fit as well, but going outside of University Heights and just working with Cleveland Heights additionally.
Okay.
I'll say that I had thought of, I kind of wanted to hear how things, how people talked about interests and how things would break out here, but something that had been in the back of my head, and Mandy just brought it up with the CH Green Team. They're already out there doing a lot of education and advocacy around that. There might be some space for being broadened into a Heights a Heights Green Team if they were so amenable, or if people were interested in doing that. So just something out there. The other thing is I really also like the idea of doing the fair. That's something tangible and an actual date we can put something, an actual deliverable we can have from this committee, and it can tap any number of interests that people have here. it could touch just about everything
Everything.
that people have talked here,
Yeah.
depending on what you want to put into it personally, into that fair. And I think
Yeah.
it could be a really, really good thing.
Brian, do you know anybody on that green team for Cleveland Heights?
I do not personally, but I can I could get some names and contacts.
I know one of the I think the founders from another group. So I'm happy to reach out. I don't know if we want to, I don't know what I should say. If we want to invite her to one of our meetings or just get more information from them about how they prioritized or.
Mandy, if you want to, Mandy, if maybe we could get together and see how we could leverage a relationship there. And
Sure.
yeah, I'm glad you and I can team up on that and we can figure out how we can just say, hey, like tell us if you would give us some advice on what to do.
Right.
Because nobody ever says no to giving you free advice, right?
That's right. I'm sure they would love to.
And then we can, kind of learn from their expertise and start to build a relationship that would, we already share school districts. We might as well see what we can leverage from their expertise.
That
Right.
would be they're set up a bit differently where they're not connected with their municipality. But there's probably room for both, from actual citizen-led advocacy and then also working directly with the city like this group is trying to do. So
Okay. All right. Well, Mandy and I will take that on, I guess. And then I got to jump here, you guys. But
Yeah.
I can do what I said about putting some teams together. Jeffrey, you're going to drive the thing on the Rust Belt Riders.
Yes, I'll be happy to.
Okay. Jackie, are you going to drive the Earth Day team start?
I can give it a whirl, yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be great to just start making a list of people like the Green Team, I think, and Rust Belt Riders and Cuyahoga Recycles and the Solid Waste Department and all those, and solar panels and all that stuff. I mean, just a list of some of the people that we would want to see there. Maybe that's a place to start. So if people would send me organizations that they know that might want to participate in something like that, please feel free to do that.
And Elizabeth, sounds like you have a history of the world of all the things I wish I knew, but I don't, around really the value of why your lawn is not the best place to invest your money.
Well, that is true, but I want to focus on things that we can do now and things that we can do within the next few months.
Okay.
So I'm really focused on the recycling and on the Earth Day activities.
Okay.
And so if I was going to do I want to put my energy into those two things for the next few months.
Elizabeth, does that make you my team member?
Yes, that does make me your team member, Jackie.
Yes.
Okay, so I know there's some fellas on this call I've left out. I'm sorry. That's not my plan. That's not my intent. I'm just, it's my mother coming out of me. I grew up in a house of all girls. So Joshua, Chris, Michael, Jim, John, Matt, where do you think you would like to apply your expertise, or if you're still mulling it over and want to share your desires in a note, and I'll get a little framework for our team built out where we're all going to focus, and we're all going to help Jackie and Elizabeth to help them get started on this Earth Day event.
Yeah, I'm happy to help with the Earth Day event or the Walt Fair, whatever we decide we want to call it.
Okay.
I love recycling, but I'm more interested in the bigger picture carbon impact stuff.
I think, yeah, I would agree. We need some big picture things and we need some quick wins, right? We have a big goals, and then we need, so that people don't think we're just like goofy blowing smoke oh yeah, we're gonna reduce global greenhouse gas, right?
Mhm.
But we gotta show them right away, like, hey, here's the stuff we're gonna do immediately, like Chris Merrick, who's I'm sure a very quiet man, because he doesn't say much, but he's gonna say something brilliant when he finally reemerges to speak.
Obviously, you haven't talked to my children.
Well, there's a lot of ground that we want to cover, and I don't want to lose momentum. Would it be too soon to meet again next week, like on Wednesday, maybe?
Can we set up a cadence for like an every other Tuesday, and I'll set those, I can set up those calls with
Yeah.
with this group or something.
Well,
Or wait,
we-
who's your assistant, Matthew?
My assistant is Ben,
Oh,
but
Ben.
and we originally we'd started on a Wednesday. I know Tuesday is not great for Brian because of the bike Cleveland events, although that I don't know if that was a one-off.
That was a one-off thing for.
Oh, that's a one-off. Oh,
Well,
okay.
not a one-off. It's a once a month thing. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
once every month.
So
Yeah,
can we do an every other? Because I think every week is going to be tough for everybody.
Yeah, I don't think it should be every week. It's just that 2 weeks from now is bad for me, and most of my nights that week are accounted for. That doesn't mean that you all couldn't meet.
Can we go with an every other, and then you can join us as you can, Mayor?
Yeah, we could do
That
that.
way, yeah, we'll invite you. If you can be here, great. If you have other commitments, that's okay. We don't want to lose momentum.
No,
Well,
that's
Take over, Rebecca. Go.
when we're talking
Sorry,
about
I'm used to
momentum,
managing tax partners for big four accounting firms, so
I guess.
look, this is what we're doing, okay? Poor Mandy's my neighbor. How'd you like to have me next door to you?
okay.
Really awesome.
Yeah, if people are good on Tuesday, the 8th, that would be
That's
2
good.
weeks from now. Mhm.
All right, so is that Ben? Is Ben on?
No, Ben's not on tonight, but I will make sure I will tell Ben in the morning that we're looking at February 8th, Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Okay,
I won't be able to do that, Mayor. This
Oh,
is
you know?
Elizabeth. Yeah, I'm only one person, so, just go ahead. I'll try to communicate with people. Yeah.
that's okay. Elizabeth, I'm gonna take notes. We'll get the notes out. after these meetings, I cannot go back and sit and watch a meeting. I'll take notes. I'll send notes out after the meeting, so we're all informed. It's just everybody make sure to send your contact info to me, so I've got you.
Thank you for doing that, Rebecca. I think that'd be awesome. I think for a lot of us, I like the idea of a cadence every couple of weeks. Some of us can make them, some can't. I'll be the same. Like I said, I'll be in and out, but I
Right.
appreciate a note taker and meeting minutes so we can all kind of be on the same page. That's awesome.
Yep, and if I
Thank
can,
you.
I'll try and get some sort of like team room set up or something like that. Just bear with me, because I'm just my
Well,
first
the
day.
city, yeah, well, the city can set up this Zoom meeting again. I mean,
Yeah,
so,
that'd be good. 'Cause
yeah, no, I mean, Ben will set that up and we will assign somebody to administer it. So that'll be taken care of.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't want to have to use my own account for that. but-
No, there's no need. We have a couple of different city accounts for these purposes. So,
Okay.
okay. All right.
question,
Yes.
Mayor, how are things going about the presentation before council as far as recycling is concerned right now?
Well, we had one committee meeting already, and where we presented our budget. And the motion that the finance committee passed was that they wanted me to cut $1.5 to $2 million out of that budget and come back to them. I told them that if you have specific cuts you want to make, you need to put those forward. I do not intend to cut $1.5 million out of the city's budget. This is the administration's budget is the budget, and as I told them, I do not intend to bid against it. And I know that in an effort to cut $1.5 million, I'm hearing that they intend to cut nearly the $250,000 we need to buy these recycling carts. that's not something I tend to stand for. I heard all last year through the campaign how much people wanted to see recycling upgraded. And that was also part of my platform that I ran on, and it's campaign promise. I'm not going to cut that from the budget. If they cut it, ultimately I can't help it if they do. But the next Finance Committee meeting is Thursday, February 10th, I believe. And that's a public
You
meeting.
win the election, Mayor? I thought the Four Horsemen won the election.
The apocalypse?
Well,
apocalypse isn't the word I would use, but yes, that's the general idea.
well, the certified results are that I got more votes even last time than I did 4 years ago. So, I guess it depends on what you're reading, Jim.
I'm glad that I made my prediction post about the recycling getting axed at the very beginning. As soon as I did, I had no idea it would be confirmed within hours.
Well, yeah, I mean, that hasn't been publicly stated, but it's been emailed to us by the vice mayor that she wants that out. So, that's
And what she wants is what she gets.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, but that's, I'm not taking it out. I'm going to continue to advocate for the program.
So that it behooves
Make ourselves
all of
clear.
us to be able to speak up and talk to members of council as members of the committee and as citizens of University Heights, that this is important.
Yes, that would be helpful. Okay. All right. So Tuesday, February 8th, 7 p.m. is the next meeting, but in the meantime, feel free to do exactly that. And hopefully I can join you for part of that. I do have another meeting at that time, but I'll see what I can do. All right. Well, good seeing everyone. Any parting thoughts before we go? I think Rebecca had to leave. I know she was needing to get off the call. Well, we've been on for quite a while, but the time flies. There's so much to say. So good seeing everyone, and we'll be in touch.
Okay.
And then we'll
Thank
send.
you.
Information. We'll get the Google link, the Google Drive going.
Excellent.
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
All right.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks for joining us, Matt. All right. Bye-bye.